Hey and welcome. This is Kim Howerton making some pad thai. This is a really delicious dish with a lot of steps, nothing complicated. The first thing you're going to do is grab 2 bags of Miracle Noodle fettuccine, cut them open, drain them, and then rinse them. So the liquid they're kept in can be a little stinky, so you're just going to rinse that off. The noodles are really neutral in flavor. Get them really well rinsed and then drain all the water out of that and then pop them into a hot pan on the stove. I use a non-stick pan, and then we're gonna cook out a bunch of the water that's remaining. So make sure they're spread around, get the heat high enough that there's steam coming out, mix them up a little bit. Once they're mostly dry, do a pinch of salt in there. They need salt to add flavor. And then you're going to set those noodles aside. For this, I use the same pan over and over again. So I have a bunch of bowls set up so that I can have all my ingredients ready to go when I need them. So just take those out of the pan and put them in a bowl. Then we're going to prep our scallions. So first you're going to cut off the ends and any frazzled bits that you see. So you've got some nice clean scallions. You're going to, well, I do this. I slice across the white part to make those a little smaller as they're more pungent. And then I just chop those up. You can use more or less scallions depending on how much you love scallions. I love them, so I go with 2, but you could go more or less. Once those are chopped, pop them in a bowl, and then we're going to move on to the most interesting ingredient we have. Okay, so maybe it's not that interesting. It's iceberg lettuce. Why it's interesting is who the heck puts iceberg lettuce in their pad thai? Well, I do it because it's crispy and crunchy and very mild in flavor, and it absorbs flavors well. It's very, very low carb. So you could use cabbage if you wanted to, but I like iceberg lettuce. So take a small head of it, or half, depending if it's a large head, and then just slice it into strips so they're kind of like noodles. And then pop it in a bowl. And then prep some garlic. So do like 2 to 3 cloves of garlic. Just slice those, make sure they're, peeled, and then slice them up real small. You might notice I'm a little stingy with the garlic here. I literally had 2 cloves left. I was running out. So you can go a little more intense on the garlic than I did here. It's a little paltry. All right. Once you're done with that mincing, set that garlic aside, and we're going to move on to the peppers. So I happened to have little mini peppers, so I used some little mini peppers, but normally I use 1 small red pepper. Whatever you've got is what's going to work. Make those bite-sized, small, thin pieces. They add a really nice bright color, so don't skip this step. All right, make the sauce. In a little measuring cup, I added some lime juice, some vinegar, either an apple cider vinegar or a rice wine unseasoned, some tamari, which is wheat-free soy sauce. We're going to add some sweeteners. So I've got here some brown sugar swerve as well as some Stevia Glycerite. You need those for the sweet and sour, but you could pick your own sweetener depending on what you've got. And then I added some nut butter. You can use almond or peanut butter, adding to both the flavor and helping the texture quite a bit. It thickens that sauce. Then you're going to add some unsweetened ketchup. Or you could do tomato paste, or you could do a keto ketchup, one that's sweetened with a keto friendly sweetener, but you need that kind of tomatoiness being added. And then just stir that up. Yeah, it'll be a little streaky with that nut butter in there. It's okay. Just get it as combined as possible. When you add it to the dish, it's going to be on heat, and then it will fully combine. So don't get stressed out if it's a little streaky in there. Set that aside, and we're ready to prep the shrimp. So get the biggest shrimp you can find, jumbo prawns. You want them peeled and deveined, but leaving the tail on is always a nice touch. You want to toss those with some lime juice and salt, and then heat some oil, some coconut oil or some avocado oil in a pan, and add them on a high heat. We're just cooking a minute or 2 aside so that they're cooked but not overcooked. And once those are done, once they're white in the middle with that pink exterior, you're going to place them in a side bowl, as our many side bowls are adding up at this point. Okay, we have reached the assembly point. So all our hard prep work is going to pay off. Leaving that oil from the shrimp in the pan, you're going to keep that pan hot or reheat it if you turned it off, and add the garlic. And cook that garlic just for a minute or two so that it starts to really break down a bit. And then once that's been cooking, minute or two, we're going to add those scallions to the pan. Let the stir it up, let the scallions cook until they start to soften a bit. That'll take about 2 minutes. Making sure there's enough oil in the pan, nothing's burning, but this is just a pretty quick cook before we add the next ingredient. Add that sliced lettuce or cabbage if you use that, and just stir it up a little bit to get it distributed, and then pop the top on it. We're going to steam it a bit, and there's enough water coming out of the lettuce that we don't have to add any water. So we're just going to cook that so it's cooked down a bit. Once that's steamed for about 2 or 3 minutes, we're just going to add the peppers. The lettuce isn't all the way cooked down, but we're going to keep cooking, so we don't need it completely noodly yet. So mix that up, flip it around, stir it up. Try not to fling things out of the pan, as is my desire always, and get that well distributed, get the oil mixed around, and then pop the top back on to cook a little longer. All right, so it's cooked another 4 or 5 minutes now, and you can see that the lettuce is really well wilted. So we're gonna add the sauce to the mix and then stir that up so the sauce gets well distributed. Pop the top back on and then let that cook. That top on cooking time here will allow the sauce to really infuse those vegetables and have a much stronger flavor. You're cooking it just another 3 to 4 minutes. Taking off the top, you can see that the vegetables have reduced even further. You can see the sauce is burbling. That's what you want to see. Once it looks like this, we're going to take those reserve noodles and we're going to pop them into the pan. I use tongs for a lot of this, you might have noticed. It's a lot easier to grab and flip and turn things than it is with a spoon or a spatula. And so they're very helpful because I am a klutz, as we have established if you've watched very many of my videos. So turning those around, making sure they're really well coated in that sauce. Now you're going to toss in the pre-prepped meat. So whether you decided to do chicken, pork, whatever, you're going to have that sliced up into bite-sized pieces. Throw that in the mix at this point. Cover that and set it aside while we make the eggs. So get a small pan, put some fat in it, like some butter, or for dairy-free, some coconut oil or avocado oil. Take 2 eggs, crack them, add a pinch of salt, beat them up, then throw them in that hot prepared pan, and you're going to make scrambled eggs. So just let them cook slowly, using a spatula to make sure they don't stick or burn anywhere. And once you don't want them runny for this, you want them actually fully cooked scrambled eggs. So once they're fully cooked, set those aside. Open up your pad thai and toss them in, and then just stir them up to distribute the scrambled egg in the noodle dish. Pop the top back on to keep them warm while you make the toppings. So first thing I want are some chopped nuts. So traditional would be some chopped peanuts. You could also do peely nuts or macadamia nuts, but they add a really nice crunch. So chop those up real fine, about an ounce of them, set them aside in a little bowl. Once those are done, we're gonna move on to creating these scallion swirls. So now we're going to make our scallion swirls. So you might note that the green part of a scallion, if you open that up, it kind of has a tendency to curl. So you can take advantage of that by cutting sort of with the grain of that scallion the long way with a sharp knife, carefully your fingers, and you'll get little swirlies. Now, you totally don't have to do it this way. You can simply chop some the green part of the scallion into little pieces and use that as the garnish. But if you want little swirlies, you just cut down along the seams of the scallion. What is that called? The grain? Is it a grain? I know meat, it's a grain. Anyway, just do what I'm doing here. Pluck some cilantro off the stems and chop that finely. Use as much as you tend to like. And then plate your noodles, topping them with some of your cooked shrimp. Sprinkle on your cilantro. Add your scallions to the top in a decorative pattern, or just throw them on there, depending on your mood. And then finish off with a generous sprinkle of nuts. Serve with a wedge or two of lime, because people like to squeeze a little lime on their pad thai often. And you are ready to serve a delightful plate to the table, and people will not believe that it's keto. And enjoy.